glucose, well, it's covered by my picture here, sorry, glucose and oxygen, and they all have a cell body, which is a central part. Okay, that's a cell body, and there's a lot of processes, which are the branches, we call it the processes. So that is a neuron. It's a big cell body with different processes. And in this picture showed, which is very typical neuron here, a cell body in the center, okay, and all the branch are processes. And you can see in this neuron, there's a short processes, like those processes, those branch, like a tree, and a very long one, single one. So those processes have different name, and those are the dendrites, like a tree. Oh, sorry, I crossed it. And the other is axon. That just have one single long one, which is axon. And if you see it with a microscope, it will just look like this picture at in B. Okay. So that is a neuron. It's a neuron, have those branch, so it receive and send a signal, because the branch is a place that you can wire your whole body. The center part of the neuron, this part is called cell body, soma or pericardium. Okay, pericardium, so think about the word eukaryotic, real nucleus. The cardium means the nucleus, pericardium. Remember the periosteum, perichondrium, those means surrounding. So we are talking about a structure that surrounds the cell nucleus. It's just a cell body. Okay, that's a soma, cell body, pericardium, those are the same thing for this structure. And that structure, that's a part for the biosynthetic center. It synthesizes all the protein, membrane, lipids, chemical, it's all happened here. So you can think most of those organelles, like ER and the ribosome, mitochondria, most of them are in this location. And you can see in the picture here, this is a real picture, which is more dense, and you just see the cell body, only the cell body. You didn't really see those processes. Okay, so those nucleus is a surround. It's in the center here. There's a nucleolus. Nucleolus is a center dark part, and then we have the nucleus, which is this part. Okay, so that is the center of the neuron, and the whole neuron also have some pigment in the cell body and show the shape of it. In most plasma membrane of the cell body is also a receptive region that will receive the electrical signal to come in. Most of those neuron cell bodies are located in the CNS, the central nervous system. On the outside layer, the gray matter of the brain, and also the gray matter, the center of the spinal cord. And in some part of the brain, it's more like a cluster of neurons, and we call this cluster of neuron cell bodies, we call it a nuclei. So that's the same word as a cell nuclei, but remember here we are not talking about structure of the cell. We are talking about a structure inside the nervous organ, like a brain or spinal cord. So those are a cluster of neuron cell body. And in the PNS, we do have some cell body as well, and those locations are normally called a ganglia. Ganglia is a location that in the PNS and is a cluster of a neuron cell body as well. So if you see a bump along a nerve, remember all the nerves are in the PNS. So that bump is a cluster of a cell body, we call it a ganglia. So if you heard some ganglia, those means a cluster of neuron cell bodies along the nerve in the PNS. So the center part is the cell body, and the processes are the arm-like branch. We call them axon and dendrites. The dendrites are the tree-shaped structures like those. Those are the dendrites. And the axons is normally just one singular long things from the cell to the target cell. Okay, from the cell body to the target cells. Like for the one control your muscle movement, the cell body normally inside your spinal cord, and the axon will go along the spinal cord and go through your whole body. Depends on where the muscle you are talking about. If we are talking about muscle that in your forearm, then this axon will be as long as from your spinal cord to the forearm on that target to control that skeletal muscle. So in the CNS, it contains neuron cell body and also their processes. Those are the dendrites and axons. But however, for the PNS, it's a majority. It's a nerve, right? We see nerve, and nerve in fact is a cluster of axons. So the PNS is mostly processes. So in the CNS and the PNS, the cell body, neuron cell body have different name. The neuron cell body of CNS are in the nuclei, and in the PNS are in the ganglia. And for the neuron processes, they have different name, or we see the location as well. In the CNS, we call them tracks. If they are the processes in the CNS, those are the tracks. And if those are in the PNS, we call them nerves. PNS called nerves. The processes can be further divided. One is a dendrites. Dendrites, we just talk about them. Those are like tree branches. And by function, those dendrites are receptive. So they receive input from other neurons or directly from the environment. So those are the receptive part of the neuron. Signal go into the dendrite. So those dendrites receive information as a graded potential, and those are the short distance signal. Those are electrical signal, but it's a very short distance. That's why those dendrites are short. In some area of the brain, there's a dendrites get very specialized, and they have a place called a dendritic spine, as you see in those bubble here on the dendrites. Those are the spine that will increase the area to receive the information. And the long part of the neuron here is an axon. Normally, for one neuron, just one axon per cell. And those are coming from a place called the axon helix. It's the triangular structure here. That is axon helix. It comes from this location. It's kind of a funnel, receive all the information from the cell body and send it along the axon. So that's how the cell body, how those signals transfer. It's received from the dendrite and then sent through the cell body, and then it's a go along the axon. So that is a direction of the information. It always from dendrite, cell body, and axon. So that is a direction. Make sure you know that the axon is to send out information. It's sent out. So that axons, some axons may be short, but for the motor neuron, normally the motor neuron, it have very long axons, like 1 meter long. For example, the neuron that innervate to the adductor helices. Remember where the adductor helices is? Just by the name, you know it's something that duct the helix. That's a big toe. So it's inside the foot. So think how long the muscle, how long this axon have to go through from the spinal cord and until the big toe. Okay, so those are the structures inside the neuron. You have the short dendrites receive information and a very long axon to send information. Okay, so those, if the axon go very long, we call it a nerve fibers, just like muscle fibers. Does that make sense? It's a fiber, but since neurons are in the fiber shape, we call it nerve fiber. In most of the case, the axon is a single, just one long single branch, and that is axon. Occasionally, they do have a branch like this one. Here it go out, it will target to another cell, and that is called axon collateral. Okay, so but however, at the end, no matter how many axons you have, at the end normally have a terminals and have so many branch. You can see at this location here. Well, for one axon, one neuron, it may have up to 10,000 terminal branches. So look at this picture here. What it target is to a skeletal muscle. So if it have a 10,000 terminal branch, which means this neuron may target and control 10,000 muscle fibers. That's a very big group of muscle. Okay, so that is an axon, and you can see the distal end is axon terminal, and the proximal end will be the cell body and also the dendrites. Okay, so at the axon terminal, you see there's small button on it. So small buttons, those small buttons, well, here in fact is neuromuscular junction, and those buttons we just call it the terminal buttons. The axon is the one that conducting signal. So signals go along the axon from the cell body to the axon terminal. That's why we call it a terminal. That's the end. So the nerve impulse are generated from the helix of the axon helix to the terminal. It's generated along the axon. So all those information, those electrical signal, travel along the axolemma, just like a sarcolemma. Lemma, that's cell membrane. So axolemma is a cell membrane of the neuron. So along the axolemma to the axon terminal here. It's the axon terminal. And the axon terminal is a secretory region. The axon terminal are the location will secrete different neurotransmitter, like dopamine, like serotonin. Okay, all those neurotransmitters are released from those small axon terminals. Remember the acetylcholine that released from the neuromuscular junction from the axon terminal of the motor neurons. Those are the secretory region. Those are the axon terminals secrete the acetylcholine. Okay, so those secretory chemicals, the one get secret out, are the neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters are released into extracellular space, and those neurotransmitters, they can either excite or inhibit the target cell. In this picture here, we see is a motor neuron controls the skeletal muscle. Acetylcholine will bind to the skeletal muscle, and you know that acetylcholine binding to the acetylcholine receptor will open that acetylcholine receptor, which is a sodium ion channel, and that excited, active those muscle cells. But however, in some other case, with other different receptors, with other different neurotransmitter, it may inhibit those target cell as well. Okay, so those are the axons, and together with the axon terminals. The axon carries many conversations with the different neurons at the same time, and at this location at the axon, there's no rough ER, so it doesn't synthesize any protein there, and no Golgi apparatus, so it doesn't modify any protein. So basically, all the protein are pre-made in the cell body. In the cell body, make all those protein, send it along the axon, send it to the terminal, and release it there. So for the cell body is very important to renew proteins and membrane, and it also have all those transport mechanism along the axon. Just as long as the cell body make it, and the axon is like the highway, just bring all those load, bring those new products to the axon terminal and release them there. So even if it's cut, well, the factory which make all the protein, the cell body is still intact, so the neuron is still alive. But the axon will quickly decay if it gets damaged.